Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
Well, this is a very interesting interview because I've never interviewed a nanny, but Florence, this is interesting. Florence Ann Romano is much more than a nanny anymore. She now stars in a new web series created to help families grow stronger. So, Florence, welcome to our show. I don't know, let's see, you are calling from?
From Chicago.
Chicago, the Windy City. I should have known that. And you've turned out, as you said, you started at a very young age being a babysitter, and then you turned into a nanny, and then you've just done this and making this into a business. How does one do that?
Oh, gosh. I always say I think it chose me. I just kind of, went on the ride. I went, starting as a mother's helper and at the age of 11 and became a babysitter like most young girls do, and then eventually became a nanny. And after I retired from being a nanny, I wrote my first children's book, Nanny and Me, and it helps children understand the transition of being cared for by their parents to being cared for by a nanny or a caretaker. And then started my brand, the Windy City Nanny, and talking about childcare in the new millennium and how different the world is today in terms of childcare. The statistic is that over 64% of families in America today have a nanny or a caretaker. And it's just an enormous, data point. And so when I started looking at that, I thought to myself, I really want to put this statistic under the microscope and wonder, are kids going to be better off or worse off for being raised by someone other than their parents? And we're writing the result of that statistic right now. And it's my hope that they will be better for it, that they'll have more role models in their life, more positive role models in their life. But there are a lot of issues regarding child care and the people that we're choosing to take care of our children. So
that's what I was just going to interrupt you to say. It's great to have a nanny. So are you going to help people to know the questions and to know what to look for in a nanny?
Yes. I mean, the vetting process is what it's all about. You really do have to understand who you are as a family, what your values are as a family, in order to find the right extension of you. I always say that a nanny is an extension of the eyes, ears, and heart of the parent. So in order to find the right fit, you have to know thyself. But it's also on the flip side. The nanny also has to know what their values are, what their bottom line is, what are their non-negotiables, because it has to be a good fit for both parties. So, yes, the questions to ask, some of those might seem basic, but it's all coming from a values standpoint, and then going deeper than that, understanding how you feel about discipline, how you feel about health and education and corporal punishment, things like that. These are all important things to consider when hiring a nanny.
Yeah, absolutely. And so do you keep up with some of the children that you first nannied? Is that a good word, nannied? I don't know.
Yes, I still am in touch with every single one. I do not let them go. They just become such a big part of your heart and your life. And one of the little girls that I nannied for, who is no longer a little girl, is a thriving adult now and getting married next year. And she gave me the best gift in the world. A couple of years ago, we ran into each other at a mutual friend's wedding. We run to each other across the dance floor and give each other a big hug. And she pulled back and looks at me and with tears in her eyes said, "You're still the voice in my head all these years later." And I just lost it, of course, crying, big, ugly cries. And, that's the holy grail for a nanny is you hope that you did something right, just like any parent. You hope you do something right that sticks with the child. I was always coming from a place of love with them, even if I didn't do every single thing right. Just like parents, nannies don't do everything right all the time either. But if you come from the right place, if everything is done with the intention of love and kindness and growth, then you're in the right profession. But if you don't like kids and you don't take seriously the fact that you need to be a role model for these very moldable, brains and hearts, then you really need to think about another career.
That's right. And how did your parents feel about your doing this as a real profession? You started out as a little kid?
They were always a big fan of me working with children because they knew how much I loved kids. And it was funny because I always laugh and say, I think I ran out of my babysitting money just recently because when I started babysitting, I was babysitting constantly. And, there would be families that would be fighting in the neighborhood saying, hey, you can't take her from us. That's our babysitter and no way. And then when I, finally became like a more of a full-time nanny, all the claws, they even, had a tighter grasp around me because, when you find someone that fits the heart of the home, that fits your values, and you, the nanny, find family that is such a good fit for you, and you kind of mold into one another, you really hold on to that. It's a really special thing. And I know I'm not the only one that has experienced this. I know there are plenty of families out there that have these amazing stories about their nannies and relationships. But there also is the flip side, and there are many people who have had very bad experiences with their nannies.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, you have to take it. You have to take it seriously like a job when you're vetting these nannies. You have to put in the time and the effort, and you have to, do background checks and have observation periods, trial periods. You're hiring someone to take care of your most precious possessions, and, that's not something you should take lightly.
Yeah, right. So that's a great thing. All right, so now you actually are going to go public. I mean, this is big. So you have a website, of course, but you now are doing this on YouTube. You actually have a web series, and it's called The Windy City Nanny.
Yes, I do. So the background on the web series is, I've always tossed around the idea of perhaps doing something, but I never was quite sure exactly what story I wanted to tell. And when I started looking at that statistic that I mentioned earlier and thinking about the families that were attached to that statistic, I wanted to really dig deeper and see, what these families looked like from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all different child care situations. And I wanted to remind parents that, you have to let love in. You have to ask for help. But most importantly, that old adage of it takes a village to raise children. It's a great saying, but I also think it's too vague. What I want to do in this web series is help parents understand how you build that village, give you tools to do it, give you the directions to the village, and encourage and empower you to be the best that you can be with a robust group of people around you to help support you in that journey.
What we talked about this as far as knowing what to expect, and I mean, when someone hires someone, I think they're pretty casual. I don't think they have what I would call a contract. Did you ever have a contract given to you, or was it just, oh, you're cute, you're nice, we're watching, you're fine?
I very rarely had a contract. There was only one time that I did, and that was toward the end of my nanny tenure when it was more it was more common at that point now that you were signing some sort of contract. And I would encourage all nannies to have something in writing. It's about protecting yourself, about protecting the family. So, don't attach a negative connotation to it. I think it's perfectly acceptable, and you should encourage it.
So, usually I thought nanny, these were people that came in from abroad. I didn't think of nannies particularly who lived here in the United States. Mm-hmm. Why is that?
Well, I think people often use the term nanny and au pair in two different ways. Au pair tends to have a more European feel to it, I think, to your point, people that come over from Europe. We still use that terminology today. There are very much so families that hire an au pair, and that au pair may be from Europe, but they may also be from the States, and they're using that term to define their nanny. Some people use it interchangeably. But why do we see people coming from overseas to do this work? Just like any other reason why people want to come to this country. They want a better life and different experiences, and the same is said for that. And being a nanny, depending on the family you're working for, oftentimes can lead you to a lot of experiences in life that you wouldn't normally have, maybe in the country that you're originally from, or even just in general. Families that have, a very elevated means, you as their nanny are traveling with them. You're being exposed to a lot of different culture and experiences. So that is a very big perk for nannies, especially young men and women. when they come to this country to take that type of job. But again, you have to make sure you are hiring the right person. They have to first and foremost love children. Their heart has to be in the right place to be doing this work. It's fine if they're attracted to the job for different perks. Any person for any job that they have usually is looking for some sort of perks attached to that job, whether it's bonuses or PTO or whatever it might be. Same is said for nannies, but it doesn't change the fact that no matter what, you need to be vetting the person.
So I just want everyone to know again, I'm talking to Florence Ann Romano. She's calling in from Chicago. She's starring in a new web series created to help families grow stronger. It's called the Windy City Nanny. Great name. People will really know that. So this is the thing that's so interesting, that I haven't really known any web series. Is this what's the newest thing now, that you can produce movies on the web and that's it?
Well, I wouldn't even consider it necessarily a movie. The episodes are no more than 10 minutes, really easy, snackable content for those very busy moms and dads who do not have time to sit down and watch a full-length feature. It's very, easy for them to access. This YouTube platform has become very, very popular in the past few years, and actually very popular with children. Children tend to watch a lot of YouTube. There's an array of different types of content you can find on YouTube, but we are finding more and more that folks that are in my type of industry, creative or in some sort of influencer capacity, are using YouTube to be able to communicate their message. And I felt that using YouTube to be the home for these interviews that I do with these families and the work that I do with the families, it was just a good fit.
So what happens now as a nanny if you don't think the parents are very good and you wind up, you have to be so careful, but you just quit, but then you worry about the children.
Right.
What has that ever happened to you?
I've been in situations where I don't agree with what the parents are doing, and I've had to have a conversation about, what my point of view was and what theirs was, because you have to remember, nannies sometimes see and hear things that the parents don't see and hear. And in my situation, I did sit down with parents at one point and talk to them about the fact that their child was making themselves so sick over the pressure that they felt educationally, coming from her parents. And I never attacked them. I never said, you guys are terrible parents and I'm going to quit. I can't work for people like you. Right. I wanted to work out the problem together. I wanted to educate them about what was going on with their daughter, and they were very receptive and they were grateful for the information. But if you don't have employers that are like that, who are wonderful and gracious and willing to listen to you about what you're seeing, then you have to make a decision about whether or not you can back up this family if it meshes with you morally. Again, coming from a place of values. I know you love the child, but if the toxicity between you and the parents is thick and you can feel it and it's affecting everything, then that's not going to be the best situation for the child. So you do need to, again, go back to the bottom line. What is the best for the children? And also taking care of yourself, too. Sometimes it's just not a good personality fit. And again, sometimes it doesn't jive with your morals. And it's up to you to decide whether or not you want to stay in that situation. But you should not just stay because you love the children. That's not a good enough reason. I
was thinking as you were talking, actually, that there are a lot of grandparents that must feel exactly like you, but they just can't. They can't talk the way you do to the parents because but
sure.
I'm sure they don't like what they see sometimes. What they see and is not. I'm sure that. I know. It's hard because you know what the grandparents they raise their children a certain way, and then those children have their own children. And my mom always has a great phrase. She says, take what we did right and use it. Take what we did wrong and lose it with your own children. And, it's hard for grandparents not to get involved when they see something that's not the way they would do it. But it's also not their place to be raising those children unless that is their role in that family. Right. And that has to be expressed, But, there's a difference between
being there to bounce ideas off of, as a grandparent, saying, hey, what do you think I should do? I'm kind of lost in this situation, and being able to offer advice. And then, inserting yourself in a place you shouldn't. It's a delicate line the grandparents walk. I know that much.
Right. I'm sure some of them have leaned on you. Thinking
and
about
they have, and I'm always happy to do it.
Yeah, I got that. Okay, so tell me, do you have other actors in your what do we call it? Do I call it a movie? What do I call
series?
it? Yeah.
So no actors. Everybody, they're real life parents, and I'm the host, and I go to these families. So no actors. Everybody's real as can be. These are all real life situations.
So it's a reality show in essence.
It's a reality show, exactly. Mm-hmm.
And people like to be on there. I'm sure that's something. Is this something the first time you've done something like this? I know that you have a company. You have a production company, right?
Yes, it's the first time I've aired anything any of the work I do with families. It's the first time people are getting to see real life families working through various situations. But it's not my first time doing things on camera. I'm very lucky to have done a lot of media and different opportunities in that way. But this is the first time I've produced a reality series.
So this is exciting for everybody. So, I don't know. You didn't mention this. Are you married, or do you have children?
No, I'm not married and don't have children of my own. And that always comes to be surprising to people, because they think, this woman is giving us advice about children. She doesn't have her own kids. And I always say, yeah, you're right. I don't have my own kids, but I meet many first-time parents who have never changed a diaper, never babysat a day in their life, and so I think I am more qualified than a lot of parents are when it comes to taking care of kids after 15 years of experience in the trenches.
It's funny, Florence, that I got married when I was 17 and I had my first child when I was 18. And so I could have used a nanny, but I had a mother-in-law instead. And she was very good. She knew what to do, and she helped me, but... and I've had, as I was growing, later on, I had a couple of more children, and I had live-in people. They, we didn't call them nannies. They were live-in, and they took care of it while I was working. My husband was working. Mm-hmm. But I know the thing that made nannies so popular was that TV show. What was it called? The
Nanny?
Yeah. That was great.
With Fran Drescher?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
What did you think of that show?
Oh, I loved that show. Now, that's not the typical situation where you're walking into a widower and with children, and then this nanny from Long Island, or I can't remember she was, or Queens. She was from Queens, and she, and she ends up falling in love with Mr. Sheffield at the end. I mean, I never had that happen with me, but it was very entertaining.
Yes, it was. She was very good. I don't know what's happened to her. I haven't seen her for a long time in anything.
Yeah, she was so talented, though, and it was real fun to watch.
Right. So, when they don't call you nanny, the kids, they call you by your name, right? They
would call me by my name. Yep. But it's funny, even to this day, when I meet like boyfriends or girlfriends of the kids I used to nanny for, they'll introduce me and say, "This is Florence Ann. This is the nanny," and they'll still say, but they never called me nanny. No, they called me by my name.
Of course. Oh my goodness, that's great. Now, as a nanny, do you work like 8 hours a day and then you sleep in? And how does that all work? Is this live-in?
Depends on the family that you work for. I had a very typical schedule as a nanny. I did not live in the home with these families. So it would be, in the morning you'd go, before the parents were off to work and the kids in school and all of that, and then you'd go home later at night, depending on the work schedule of the parents. So, did I travel and do things like that with families? Yes. When it was needed, when they were out of town, did I stay with the kids while the parents were gone? Yes. So, but I never lived in the home with the family. It was just never a part of my life. It was also something I was never interested in doing. The opportunity was there, but it was never something I wanted.
Oh, I was going to ask you that, because you really wanted your own life, and this was a job, even though you love the people and all, it was a job. Otherwise, you would have been owned by them in a sense and have no life.
Right, exactly. I still had a separate life, to the, my nanny family. And it was by design. If I would have wanted to do it the other way, I absolutely would have done it. And I know people do it that way, and that's great. It works for them, but it wasn't the right choice for me.
Right. Well, I will tell you this, that I am the grandmother of triplets who are now, they live in Miami, and they are 13, and they are something else. And their parents are both attorneys, so they really watch over those kids. They come from their job and they go take them where they're supposed to take them and then come back. I mean, they have really been terrific parents, but I suppose that they could have used a nanny, but I don't think she would have done that. She's from Italy, and she's very, I will use the word possessive in a very positive way. She wanted to have those children experience her as a mother.
I understand it. I'm from an old-fashioned Italian family. My mom, I didn't have a nanny when we had a housekeeper that was there. And we also had a live-in for a while when we were younger for many years.
Okay, but it's not a nanny, is it? What is,
never a nanny.
Tell me what the difference of all that is and a nanny.
Well, a nanny it really needs to be redefined in today's world. It's anyone that's taking care of a child in the parent's absence. So it's not necessarily defining the amount of time you're spending with the child. It's just the title for someone that's helping you take care of your children. So, the definition of that, like I said, varies, and you have to be very clear about that when you're looking for the nanny, that, this is someone that's going to live in with you, or this is someone that's not, this is, this is someone going to work part-time, whatever it is. So I use the term nanny as a general term. Yeah.
It's very clear, and I believe that probably the problems that occur, it is not clear what your job is, and they're probably inexperienced people. But now there are a lot of women who really can't afford their own apartment, and for them to be able to take care of children, get paid, have a place to live, and I'm sure that there are weekends they could have off, maybe it's not a bad idea.
No, it's absolutely appealing to, again, the type of person that is looking for those things to be included. I mean, again, perks, it's room and board, all of those things are important to, whomever it is for whatever reasons are driving them. So, yeah, it's appealing.
And are there male nannies?
Of course there are. There are
sorry.
so many more than there's so many more than they used to be, and it's great. You have to remember that, at least in my world, I think of a nanny as a role model for the children. So when you look at the different ways families are made today, sometimes you want a nanny of a certain gender because you want that gender as an influence for the child. If the child is being raised by two dads, sometimes those two dads may want a female nanny because they want that female influence in the child's life. And, this opposite too. If two mothers, maybe they want a male influence. So, there are a lot of different ways to kind of cut the pie. But again, it goes back to you knowing what you need in that nanny, and gender is part of it.
So as a nanny, do you cook?
Oh my gosh, no child would ever want me cooking for them.
Let's say you don't, but would a nanny have to cook?
It depends. Again, those are the expectations of the job. Some people are hiring a nanny that also is doubling as a housekeeper in some ways, and you may need to, and that's part of the requirements that family needs to tell you, hey, you're going to be responsible for, feeding these kids 5 days a week. Now, whether or not the family has already prepped that meal and you just have to feed the children, or you're actually cooking. Again, these are the little details that you have to think about.
And what ages do you like best? Do you like infants, just born babies, or do you like children? Sorry.
I love them all, but I am definitely a baby person. I am
really?
All babies all the time. I mean, I see any baby anywhere, even on a plane, a baby screaming, and I'm like, why don't you just give me the baby? I'll just take the baby. So, but I am definitely an infant.
You are.
Love the infants, yeah.
And that's really important. And does it cost a lot to have a nanny? Can you discuss money? Because you're going to be having this show. What does someone have to pay?
So the money does vary depending on whether or not they're part-time, full-time, depends on the city you live. But generally, you're going to pay somewhere around $13 an hour for a nanny. But again, don't quote me on that because it depends on where you live and, what the situation is. But a lot of the nanny sites like Sitter City, Care.com, all of these, placement agencies that you can find online, they have really great information about how the pay is broken down and what to expect in helping nannies be able to negotiate those fees and stuff like that. But it's hard to say that this is what you need to ask for. This is what it is. It depends on how many kids are in the family, if there are any special needs of the children. It depends on the hours you're working and the degree that you have. And, so there are a lot of factors into, how do you get to that number.
Do you take personally children who have challenges?
So I grew up with a brother with autism. My brother Michael is 17 months younger than I am, and I've always had a special place in my heart for children with any type of disabilities. And I did not personally work for any families that had special needs children, but I had a sibling that did. So, my experience with Michael was very fulfilling and was also the best lessons probably I could have ever learned. I learned about compassion and love and patience and all sorts of things through that. And we're all better people for knowing, children with special needs and, adults with special needs because they do shift your perspective. They make you better people, absolutely. And I know that, growing up with Michael made me a lot of who I am today, the nanny I was, and also I lived with my grandparents growing up, or rather they lived with us. My mom's parents lived with us growing up, again, an old-fashioned Italian family. And, growing up with my grandparents as well as, they raised me, in addition to my parents, that taught me unbelievable lessons because, you go from your grandparents taking care of you to eventually you taking care of your grandparents.
Yes,
and
that's
it's
true.
very full circle. You learn a lot about caretaking.
Well, Florence Ann Romano, this has been a wonderful conversation. You are going to be so successful. I can't wait to get on to your show. And let me help people do that. You're going to go on YouTube to Windy City Nanny. Windy City Nanny. And now you've heard it, and she's just starting it. And thank you so much, and so much good luck.
Oh, thank you for your beautiful words and your time and for having me. This has been such a delight.
It's been my pleasure. Good luck.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.